He was driving home late at night and suddenly noticed a black girl in the park with two babies in her arms. She was barefoot and almost unconscious. What happened next, no one could have predicted. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Write in the comments what country you're from. The house used to smell like nutmeg and lavender, long before the silence took over, before the walls echoed only with memories and muffled cries. It had been a home, a real one. Laughter once spilled from its rooms like sunlight through open curtains. There were lullabies and soft blankets, the sound of a humming stove, and the comfort and rhythm of a woman's voice. Strong, warm, beautiful. That woman had been their mother. Naya remembered her mother's hands most of all. Soft but calloused from work, always warm, always reaching for her or her baby sisters with a kind of tenderness that made everything else disappear. Their mother had worked double shifts at the clinic to make ends meet, cooked full meals even when she was exhausted, and still found time to braid Naya's hair and tuck her in with a kiss on the forehead. She was the sun at the center of their little world, and when she got sick, it felt like the sun had started to dim. It began slowly. Just a cough that wouldn't go away, a tired look that lingered too long. But then the diagnosis came, and the world tilted. Stage 4, aggressive, inoperable. Words Naya didn't understand at first, only that her mother cried behind closed doors and her stepfather, Douglas, stopped coming home at all. Her mother got thinner, quieter, and her smile began to fade until it barely reached her eyes. Naya, at 9, learned how to make oatmeal, how to feed the twins with shaky hands, how to change diapers while her mother vomited in the bathroom. Douglas changed too, or maybe the mask he'd worn finally cracked. At first, he just stayed out longer, disappearing into long nights and returning with the scent of whiskey and expensive cologne. He didn't speak to Naya unless it was to criticize. "You left the light on again. Why are they crying? Tell your mother to get her act together." After her mother passed away, his anger took up all the space she'd once filled. The funeral was small. There was no choir, no music, just a few scattered chairs and the weight of absence. Naya held her sisters close that day, dressed in black, their baby faces peeking out from soft bonnets. Douglas didn't cry. He stood like a statue at the back of the room, staring at the coffin as though it were an inconvenience. When they returned home, he threw his coat on the floor and locked himself in the master bedroom for 2 days straight. Naya tried to keep things going. She fed the twins on a schedule, changed them, whispered the lullabies she remembered, though the words sometimes got tangled in her throat. She cleaned, cooked what little she could, even tried to do her homework by candlelight once when the power was cut. But she was just a child, and children eventually stumble under the weight of adult burdens. Douglas emerged from his self-imposed isolation on a Wednesday. Naya remembered it because the rain had been coming down in sheets, and the roof had begun to leak again. He didn't say a word when he came downstairs, just looked around the kitchen as though something were out of place. Then his eyes settled on the twins, lying quietly in their shared crib in the corner. Amara was asleep. Zola was awake, sucking her fingers. "She left them with me," he muttered, his voice slurred. "She knew I didn't want them." Naya, standing by the sink, froze. "She knew," he repeated, louder this time, stumbling toward the crib. "These aren't mine. Not really, just reminders. Of her. Of failure." He reached into the crib suddenly, too fast, his hand closing around Zola's tiny arm. The baby let out a sharp, pained wail. "Stop!" Naya shrieked, rushing forward, adrenaline surging. She'd never raised her voice to him before. She'd never dared. Douglas turned, startled by her scream, and in that half-second of hesitation she grabbed Zola from his grasp and backed away. His face twisted with fury, but he didn't chase her. Not yet. He just stood there, breathing heavily, swaying. Naya didn't wait for him to decide what to do next. She scooped up Amara, too, and ran up the stairs, locking the bedroom door behind her. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely hear the twins' cries over its thudding. That night, she didn't sleep. She stayed up with the dresser pushed against the door, whispering to the babies, promising them safety she wasn't sure she could give. The next morning, Douglas was gone. A half-empty bottle of bourbon sat on the counter, and the front door was left slightly ajar. The world outside was gray and wet. Naya fed the twins in silence, and as she held them, something inside her began to harden. The second incident happened 2 days later. This time, Douglas wasn't drunk, at least not completely. He came home around midnight dragging a broken chair from the backyard. Naya had fallen asleep on the couch with both babies in her arms. The crash of wood against tile jolted her awake. He didn't speak. He just stood over her, eyes bloodshot, breathing like a cornered animal. Then he said it. "I should have left you all at the hospital. Let the state take you. You're nothing but weight around my neck." Naya didn't answer. She held her sisters tighter. "You think I'm going to raise them, feed them, pay for your black babies like some charity case?" That night, after he passed out in the recliner, Naya went to her mother's closet. Behind the old coats and shawls taped to the inside of a box was the envelope her mother had once shown her in secret. "If anything happens to me," her mother had whispered, "this is for him. Grayson, he's a friend, a good one." Naya had only met Grayson once, when she was very small, a pale man with kind eyes and a voice like still water. Her mother had worked with him on some housing project years ago. She said he helped people, made things better. Naya didn't know him, not really, but she knew what was in that envelope. A letter, a copy of her mother's will, a name, an address. She made a decision. That night, she waited until the twins were fed and swaddled. She packed their bottles, the letter, the old blanket from their crib, and the stuffed lion with the frayed ear, the one that still smelled faintly like lavender. She tiptoed down the stairs, wincing at every creak in the wood, and slipped out through the side door into the cold. The night air hit her like a slap. The wind howled. Rain soaked her shoes within seconds, but she kept going. She didn't know where she was headed exactly, just that she had to get far enough away before Douglas woke up. The street lights buzzed above her, casting long shadows on the wet pavement. The city stretched before her like a sleeping beast, indifferent and vast. With every step, her feet ached more. The twins stirred in her arms, soft whimpers rising as the cold crept through their blankets. Naya didn't stop. Her arms trembled from the weight. Her stomach churned with hunger, but she kept walking. She passed strangers who looked through her like she was invisible. One woman clutched her purse tighter and crossed the street. A man shouted something from a passing car and laughed. By the time she reached the edge of the park, her legs barely carried her. She spotted a bus stop, its shelter cracked and rusting. She slid underneath it, collapsing onto the bench, trying to shield the twins from the wind with her own body. She looked at them, tiny, innocent, shivering, and whispered, I got you, okay?" But she didn't know how long she could hold on. Her vision blurred. Her lips trembled. The rain pounded on the metal roof like a warning. She fed them the last of the formula, one after the other, hands shaking so badly she nearly spilled it. The lion toy lay beside her. The envelope was tucked inside. "I'll find him," she whispered, more to herself than to them. "I'll find Grayson, and then everything will be okay." Her voice cracked. The babies drifted into restless sleep, and as she leaned her head back against the cold wall of the shelter, she finally allowed herself to close her eyes. Just for a minute. Just to rest. The last thing she saw before the darkness claimed her was the silhouette of a car slowing down at the edge of the park. And then nothing. The sky was still weeping when Naya opened her eyes again. Her lashes were crusted with cold, and her body ached in places she didn't know could hurt. The metal bench beneath her was slick with rainwater and rust, and the threadbare blanket wrapped around the twins was soaked through, no longer capable of holding warmth. Her muscles screamed as she straightened up, her arms automatically adjusting to cradle the girls. Their bodies were still, too still, and for one heart-stopping moment, she feared the worst. Then Amara stirred with a weak, pitiful whimper, and Zola followed a breath later, her tiny face scrunching as she let out a broken cry. Relief flooded Naya's chest and brought a fresh round of tears to her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. There was no time for crying. No one had come in the night. The car she thought she'd seen must have passed by without stopping, like all the others. Morning had come, but it brought no mercy. The rain had lightened but not stopped. The air clung to her skin like cold syrup. The park around them was empty, the bare skeletons of trees reaching upward like bones. A jogger passed at a distance, headphones in, eyes forward. A man walked his dog along a paved path but didn't look her way. She could have screamed, and no one would have heard her. Her stomach growled loud enough to startle Amara. She hushed the baby gently and tried to think. They couldn't stay here. She had to find food or shelter or someone who would help. She pulled herself to her feet with effort, wobbling under the weight of the twins and the backpack slung over her shoulder. Each step felt heavier than the last, the pavement like ice under her bare feet. The plastic grocery bags she'd tied around her shoes had long since torn apart. She walked for what felt like hours. The buildings blurred together, gray and red and sharp. People bustled past her, talking into phones, holding umbrellas, clutching coffee cups. No one stopped. A woman in a business suit gave her a quick glance, then looked away just as quickly. A man selling newspapers on a corner asked, "You lost, girl?" but didn't wait for an answer. She tried a gas station first, slipping inside and shivering in the harsh fluorescent light. The cashier stared at her with a mix of suspicion and discomfort. "You alone?" he asked, eyes darting to the babies. Naya nodded. "You can't be in here. You need an adult." I just wanted to warm up, please," she whispered. He shook his head. "Not my problem, kid. You can't be in here." She backed out, humiliated, teeth chattering. The twins had begun to fuss again, and she bounced them in her arms, whispering soft nonsense to keep them calm. She tried a church next, its tall doors closed tight. A sign outside advertised a food drive, but the next date was 3 days away. She knocked anyway, then pounded, but no one came. She sat on the steps, her back against the heavy door, and fed the girls the last drops of water she had from a crushed bottle. Her stomach twisted again, and her vision swam. She tried to focus on the letter inside the toy line, on the name she could barely remember, Grayson. Somewhere in the city, he was here. But she had no idea where to look. At one point, she wandered into a diner. The smell of eggs and bacon made her dizzy. She stood near the door, staring, until a waitress spotted her and rushed over. "Sweetheart, you okay?" Naya's voice was barely audible. "Do you have something for the babies?" The woman hesitated. Then the manager came over, scowling. "You can't beg in here. Out now." "She's not begging," the waitress said quietly. "Out." Naya left. Her legs shook as she walked. Her clothes clung to her like a second skin. The cold had settled into her bones. She didn't remember falling the first time. Her knees just buckled, and suddenly she was on the sidewalk, the twins crying beside her. A man stepped around her without a glance. Another woman said something under her breath about children on the street. No one stopped. No one helped. She got up again. She had to. If she stopped now, they'd all be gone by morning. She walked until the buildings turned into warehouses, until the sidewalk cracked and gave way to gravel. She passed under a freeway overpass and found a cluster of tents and makeshift shelters. A man with wild eyes shouted something incoherent as she passed. A woman in a shopping cart offered her a half-eaten sandwich, which Naya refused out of pride, even though she wanted to rip it from her hands and devour it whole. Eventually, she found another park, this one smaller, older, tucked between two forgotten apartment buildings. The grass was overgrown. The swing set groaned in the wind. She ducked behind a row of bushes and collapsed onto the wet earth, curling her body around the twins. She didn't cry this time. She was too tired. The babies fussed but didn't scream. Maybe they didn't have the energy anymore. She pulled them close, her fingers raw and cracked. She whispered to them old lullabies, bits of songs her mother used to hum. "You're okay," she whispered. "I'm here." She didn't believe it, but she said it anyway. The sky darkened again as the afternoon faded into dusk. She fed them the last of the formula, barely enough to wet their lips. She had nothing left, not even hope. But she couldn't sleep, not here, not yet. She had to think, had to plan, and yet her body betrayed her. Her eyes slipped closed. Just for a second, she told herself, just until they stopped crying, just until... She awoke with a jolt. It was night again. She didn't know how long she'd been out. The street lights buzzed faintly, flickering. She heard footsteps. Real ones this time. A car had stopped near the edge of the park. Naya tensed, pulling the twins closer. Her heart pounded. The footsteps grew louder, then a voice, soft, uncertain. Oh my God. Kids? She couldn't move, couldn't speak. Her eyes blinked against the dark as the silhouette came into view. A tall man, pale, his hair damp from the rain. He stepped into the light, his eyes wide. Then everything faded again, and the darkness took her. She dreamed of warmth. The first thing Naya felt was warmth. Not the stale warmth of damp blankets or the artificial heat of a street lamp overhead, but something softer, deeper, like the kind of warmth her mother's arms used to give. There was a scent of clean linen and something faintly floral in the air. Her body, which had been trembling and locked in tension for days, had begun to loosen, and when she opened her eyes, the light around her wasn't harsh or flickering. It was gentle, muted by curtains drawn to shield the room from the morning sun. She sat up with a jolt. Her heart thundered as her gaze darted around, searching, scanning. The room was large, unfamiliar, yet not cold. Cream-colored walls, a high ceiling, a plush armchair in the corner. She was on a couch, no, a bed, covered in a thick comforter that looked too expensive to be real. There was a soft buzzing sound somewhere nearby, and beyond the door, the low hum of voices. Then she remembered. The park, the footsteps, the man's face leaning over hers in the darkness. Her hands shot to her sides, reaching, fumbling. The twins. She nearly fell off the bed in her haste, but before she could scream or cry, a door to the right opened slowly. "They're okay." The voice was calm, quiet, deep. A man stepped inside holding a bottle in one hand and a small baby cradled in the other. His light button-down shirt was wrinkled, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His hair was tousled, like he'd run his fingers through it too many times. He looked tired, but alert, his movements careful, practiced. Behind him, the soft gurgling of another infant echoed faintly from what sounded like a second room. Naya backed against the headboard, her arms around her knees. She didn't speak. She didn't trust him. He noticed. "I'm Grayson," he said, setting the bottle down on the nightstand. "I found you and the girls in the park last night. It was freezing. You were unconscious. I didn't know where else to take you." Still, she said nothing. Her eyes stayed locked on the baby. Zola, her heart whispered, and she watched as he placed the little girl gently into a cushioned bassinet beside the bed. Zola stirred, whined softly, then fell back into sleep. "They're okay," he repeated. "A little cold, hungry, but they're safe. You're safe." His voice wasn't soft in a forced way. It was simple, direct. She didn't know whether to believe him. "I called my friend Isabel. She's a nurse. She came right away. She stayed up all night with them. She's with the other one now." He didn't approach her, just stood there like he understood how easily she might bolt. She wanted to speak, but her throat was raw. Her body ached too much. The weight of everything, the cold, the hunger, the fear, came crashing down like a wall. Her eyes filled with tears she couldn't stop. She turned her face away, ashamed. Grayson said nothing. He didn't ask questions, didn't try to touch her, didn't press. After a moment, he stepped back through the doorway and left her alone. It wasn't long before the woman he'd mentioned came in, Isabel. She was small, maybe in her 40s, with warm brown eyes and silver starting to streak her curls. She wore simple clothes and spoke in soft tones. When she saw Naya awake, she smiled gently. "You don't have to talk yet. Just rest, baby." Naya didn't like being called baby, but something about the woman's presence calmed her. She watched as Isabel checked Zola's temperature with practiced hands, adjusted her position in the bassinet, then turned back with a clean bottle. "Your sister's awake," she said softly. "She was fussy earlier. I fed her, but she might still be hungry." Naya's arms extended before she could stop them. Isabel paused, then gently passed the bottle and Zola to her. The moment the baby settled in her arms, something shifted inside her, an anchor returning to its place. Zola latched hungrily onto the bottle. Naya stroked her head with one trembling hand and exhaled for the first time in what felt like days. "Thank you," she whispered, so softly it was almost soundless. Isabel gave her a nod, but didn't say anything else. She just sat on the nearby chair and waited. Later, after the twins were fed and clean, after Isabel had helped Naya change into warm clothes that weren't hers but smelled like fresh laundry, Grayson returned. He came into the room slowly, carrying a tray with food, toast, fruit, a bowl of warm oatmeal. Naya's eyes widened, and she couldn't stop the tears this time. She didn't want to cry in front of him, but the smell made her stomach curl with longing. "You don't have to say anything," he said, setting the tray on the small table beside her. "Just eat if you can." She ate in silence, never taking her eyes off the bassinet where both twins now slept side by side. Grayson sat a few feet away, watching but not studying her. He didn't ask questions, not yet. The day passed slowly. Isabel stayed most of it, cleaning, checking the twins, offering little comforts. Grayson stepped out a few times, making calls, returning with new supplies. Diapers, more formula, soft baby blankets. Naya didn't ask where he got them, didn't care. She simply held her sisters and watched the windows as the light changed. By evening, she began to speak. "I didn't know where to go," she said quietly, sitting cross-legged on the couch with Amara in her arms. "I just ran." Grayson was seated across the room. He didn't respond right away, just waited. He was going to hurt them. He grabbed Zola. She screamed, and I ran. Grayson leaned forward a little. "Who was?" "My stepdad." "What's his name?" Douglas Hargrove." He wrote it down on a notepad without a word. "My mom died a few weeks ago. She had cancer. It was really fast. She didn't tell many people. I think she was scared, or didn't want us to worry." Grayson's face remained still, but there was something in his eyes, an emotion just under the surface. She knew he was bad. She was going to leave him. She had a letter. "For you." She reached into the backpack she'd carried for days, her fingers fumbling for the small plush lion. She unzipped the hidden pocket and pulled out a folded, slightly crumpled envelope. She held it out, hesitant. She said, if something happened, I should find you. Grayson took the envelope with great care, as if it were something sacred. He opened it and read slowly, his brow furrowing. Isabel stepped in silently and stood behind him, reading over his shoulder. When he reached the end, he closed his eyes briefly and exhaled. "I knew her," he said softly. "Your mother. We worked together on a housing project a few years back. She was incredible, brilliant. She believed in giving people a second chance. She used to talk about her kids all the time." Naya said nothing. She couldn't speak past the knot in her throat. "She didn't tell me she was sick. She didn't tell anyone." He nodded slowly. "This changes things." He stood and walked toward the fireplace, the letter still in his hands. "Your mother asked me to look after you if anything happened. This is legal, and it means we can fight for you, officially." Naya hugged Amara closer. "But he's going to come looking for us." Grayson turned, his expression hardening. "Then we'll be ready." That night, for the first time since her mother died, Naya slept in a real bed. The mattress was soft, the room quiet. The twins lay beside her in bassinets, swaddled and full. She watched them breathe for a long time before her eyes finally closed. And in the hallway outside her door, Grayson stood in silence, the letter still in his hand, and vowed to keep a promise he hadn't known he'd made. He would protect them, whatever it took. The wind was quiet that morning. Outside Grayson's house, the trees stood still under the pale light of a winter sky. Inside, the hush of early dawn wrapped itself around the rooms like a blanket, broken only by the occasional stir of a baby's whimper or the creak of floorboards beneath careful feet. In the guest bedroom, where Naya now slept, the warmth was thick and still. The scent of clean sheets clung to the air, mixing with the faint, powdery sweetness of baby lotion. Naya lay still, her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She hadn't moved since waking, afraid that if she did, something would shatter the fragile peace she'd found in this unfamiliar place. The twins slept nearby, their small bodies rising and falling in unison, swaddled snugly in matching blankets that Isabel had brought from a storage closet. For the first time in weeks, they hadn't cried through the night. The silence should have comforted her, but instead it filled her chest with a strange kind of pressure, like the edge of something waiting to break. She sat up slowly, letting her legs dangle off the bed. The hardwood floor was cool under her feet, but not cruel. Not like the concrete she'd walked for days. Her toes still ached, blistered and red despite Isabel's careful cleaning and bandaging the night before. The pain was dull now, distant like everything else. She reached for Zola, then Amara, checking them like she always did, hands to warm bellies, fingers brushing their cheeks to feel their breath. It was a habit formed in fear, the kind that didn't go away easily. A knock came, soft and brief, before the door opened. "Good morning," Isabel said, her voice gentle and quiet enough not to wake the babies. She carried a tray with oatmeal, toast, and warm apple slices. "Thought you might be hungry." Naya hesitated, then nodded. "I let Grayson sleep in. He was up late with phone calls," Isabel said, setting the tray down on the small desk near the window. "Lawyers, I think. He's trying to figure things out. For you." Naya looked down, unsure what to say. She didn't know how to accept kindness from people who didn't owe her anything. Isabel sat on the edge of the bed. "You don't have to tell us anything you're not ready to, but when you are, we'll listen." Naya didn't speak, but when Isabel reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, she didn't flinch. It was the first time in weeks she hadn't pulled away from someone's touch. Later that morning, once the sun had climbed above the trees and the twins were fed and asleep again, Naya found herself in the living room. It was spacious but warm, filled with soft rugs and shelves of books. Grayson sat in an armchair near the fireplace, a mug of tea cooling in his hand. He didn't speak when she entered, just gave a small nod. She curled up on the opposite couch, knees tucked beneath her, the lion plush clutched in her lap. "They don't like loud noises," she said finally. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "If someone yells, they start crying, even if they're asleep." Grayson nodded. "We'll keep it quiet. They haven't eaten enough in days. I tried. I rationed the formula, but it ran out. They're eating now. They're okay." She swallowed hard. "He used to yell, not just at me, at them too. He said they were demons, that they ruined everything, that we weren't real family." Grayson leaned forward, setting his mug on the table. "Your stepfather." She nodded. "He started after Mom got sick. At first, it was little things, forgetting to pick up diapers, coming home late. Then he'd drink. Not beer, whiskey. And then he stopped pretending. He'd say things in front of us, bad things, about what we looked like, what we were. He said we were never going to be accepted, that the world didn't want us." Her voice trembled. She gripped the line tighter. "He said if Mom died, we'd be his responsibility. But he didn't want us. Not really. He hated that she had us. Hated that we looked like her, not him." Grayson didn't interrupt. He sat still, hands folded, eyes calm but alert. "One night, after she passed, I was feeding Amara, and he came in and just stood there, watching. Then he said he should have left us at the hospital, that we were mistakes." Her lips quivered. "I didn't say anything. I was too scared. But then, a few days later, he grabbed Zola. She screamed. He grabbed her so hard, I thought he was going to throw her." Grayson inhaled sharply, but said nothing. I screamed at him. He looked surprised, like he hadn't expected me to fight back. I ran upstairs and locked the door. That night, he passed out on the couch. I waited for hours, and then I took them. I packed whatever I could and left." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't know where I was going. I just remembered what Mom told me, about you, about the letter. I kept it with me the whole time." She pulled the plush line closer. "We walked for hours. I thought someone might help us, but people just looked away, like we weren't real. We slept under bridges, behind trash cans. I fed them rainwater and the last of the formula. Then the bottles broke. I thought I was going to die before I ever found you." Grayson exhaled and leaned back in his chair. "You didn't. You found us. You saved them." Naya looked down at her lap. "I don't feel like I saved anything." "You did," he said firmly. "You're here. They're alive. And that's because of you." She closed her eyes. Her throat burned. For a long time, the only sound in the room was the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Eventually, Isabel joined them, carrying a file folder. She sat beside Grayson and opened it, revealing documents, court forms, medical evaluations, letters. "We've started the process to petition for emergency guardianship," she said gently. "It's temporary for now, but if we can prove that he's a danger to you, and if the letter from your mother holds up, it can become permanent." Naya stared at the papers. "But what if he finds us?" "We've taken steps," Isabel said. "We've alerted the local authorities. We're installing a new security system this afternoon. Cameras, locks, alarms." Grayson's voice was steady. "You don't have to worry. Not here." She wanted to believe them. She really did. But she had lived too many nights waiting for the sound of a door slamming, the smell of whiskey in the air, the silence that came before shouting. She had learned to sleep with one eye open, to wake at the first hint of danger. Safety was a foreign country, and she didn't have the map. That night, while Isabel bathed the twins and Grayson met with the security technician, Naya sat in the nursery and watched the mobile spin slowly above the bassinets. It was painted with stars and moons, and it played a lullaby in delicate chimes. She reached into the line again and took out the folded photograph she'd kept since the night she ran. It showed her mother, smiling in the sunlight, holding the twins just days after they were born. Her face was radiant, strong, alive. Naya traced her mother's face with one finger. "I found him," she whispered. "I did what you asked." She didn't expect a reply, but as the twins stirred in their sleep, as the mobile turned once more and the chimes sang low and soft, something inside her finally, quietly began to settle. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of something like it. And for now, that was enough. The next few days passed like a fragile dream Naya was afraid to fully believe. Each morning she woke still expecting the crack of glass against a wall, the thunder of boots outside her door, the cold slap of Douglas's voice breaking through her thoughts. But instead, there was always warmth. Isabel's quiet footsteps as she checked the twins. Grayson's calm voice from the hallway, speaking softly to someone on the phone, the smell of real breakfast drifting from the kitchen. The silence here was different. It wasn't the silence of fear or warning. It was peace. Thick and heavy like a blanket tucked under her chin. The twins grew quieter, too. They no longer startled at the creak of floorboards. Their eyes, once wide with uncertainty, began to linger on the faces around them. Zola even smiled once when Isabel hummed while changing her. It was small, fleeting, but it made Naya's throat tighten. They were healing, slowly but truly. Grayson had kept himself busy. He spent most of his time in the study or on the phone. Naya overheard fragments sometimes, terms she didn't understand, but that sounded like protection, temporary custody, child welfare, court order. His voice always remained level, though sometimes she saw his jaw tighten, his hand clench around a pen or paper. He never told her everything, but she knew. He was building a wall around them, and she tried to believe it would hold. On the fourth morning, she stood in the sunlit kitchen holding Zola against her shoulder when Isabel entered with a strange expression on her face. It wasn't panic, Not exactly, but something colder, sharper. "Naya," she said gently, "can you sit down for a minute?" Naya blinked. "What's wrong?" Isabel took Zola from her arms and gestured to the table. Grayson appeared a moment later, holding his tablet in one hand. His face was grim. "There's something we need to show you," he said. "You're not in trouble, but we think it's better if you know." He tapped the screen, turned it toward her. It was a news clip, a local station. Naya recognized the banner. She'd seen it on TVs and shop windows before. Police continued to investigate the disappearance of 3 minors from the residence of prominent local businessman Douglas Hargrove. Hargrove, who recently lost his wife to cancer, made a public appeal earlier this week for the safe return of the children, whom he described as his stepdaughter and twin baby girls left in his care. A video played next. Douglas stood on the porch of their old house, hair tousled just enough to look pitiful, eyes red-rimmed but dry. He held up a photograph, one Naya hadn't seen in years. It was her and the twins, taken when they were still in the hospital. Her mother had been holding the camera. Douglas looked directly into it, his voice trembling just enough to seem sincere. "I don't know why she ran," he said. "She was scared, confused. But I love those girls like my own, and I just want them home. Please, if anyone sees them, call the number below, no questions asked." Naya's stomach twisted. She couldn't breathe. The air in the room suddenly seemed too thick, like trying to inhale through water. "He's lying," she said, her voice flat. "We know," Grayson said. "We know the truth. He's trying to make it look like I kidnapped them, like he's the victim. He's manipulating public opinion," Isabel agreed. "We're filing our response today. Our lawyer already sent the letter your mother wrote, along with medical records, social worker statements, and a request for a protection order." "But what if someone sees us? What if they tell him?" Grayson's eyes met hers. "They won't. And even if they do, this house is protected. The security system is fully installed now. Cameras, motion sensors, reinforced doors. No one gets in or out without us knowing. We've also notified the police. If he tries anything, he'll be arrested." Naya wanted to believe that. She really did. But her heart kept remembering the way Douglas's voice had sounded when he was angry, the way the floor shook under his steps, the way he'd looked at the twins like they were stains on his life. That night, she lay awake long after the babies were asleep. Her fingers gripped the line so tightly the stitching creaked. Every creak of the house made her jump. Every flicker of shadow on the hallway wall set her heart racing. She didn't want to be afraid. Not here, not after everything. But fear wasn't something she could switch off like a lamp. At breakfast the next morning, Isabel distracted her with pancakes shaped like stars, and the twins babbled in their bouncy chairs. Grayson talked about his work, designing a new children's center downtown, and asked if Naya liked to draw. She said yes, surprised at the question, and he brought her colored pencils and a sketch pad. It helped a little. The house felt lighter during the day, but just before noon, the intercom at the front gate buzzed. Everyone froze. Isabel, who had been feeding Amara, looked up slowly. Grayson, in the middle of typing something on his laptop, stood and crossed to the panel on the wall. Naya's breath caught in her throat. "Delivery?" Isabel offered weakly. Grayson pressed the button and the camera feed flickered on. A man stood at the gate. His clothes were disheveled, hair greasy and unkempt. He paced back and forth like a caged animal, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. When he turned, Naya saw his face. Her stomach dropped. It was him. Douglas. "Let me in." His voice crackled through the speaker. "I know you've got them. I know they're in there." Zola began to cry, startled by the sound. Isabel quickly unbuckled her from the seat and held her close, whispering to soothe her. Naya couldn't move. She was frozen in place, her hands shaken. Grayson didn't flinch. "You're on private property," he said into the mic, his voice icy. "Leave now." "You rich bastard! You think you can steal my family? I'll get the cops involved. They're mine." "They're not property," Grayson said, "and they're not yours." Douglas's face twisted into something ugly. He laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "We'll see about that." He backed away from the camera and disappeared from view. Grayson stood there for a long time after the screen went dark. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white. "He knows where we are," Naya whispered. "He's not getting through," Isabel said gently, brushing Naya's hair back. "We'll file for the emergency restraining order this afternoon, and we'll push for full custody. This only proves our case." "But he came anyway," Naya said, "even knowing it's illegal." Grayson turned then, his face calm but sharp as glass. "I've dealt with men like him before, men who use fear as a weapon. He thinks if he scares us enough, we'll give up." He stepped closer, kneeling in front of her. "He doesn't know who he's dealing with." That night, Naya barely touched her dinner. The security team stayed on the property, walking the perimeter. Lights had been added to the backyard and the driveway. Every entrance was locked, every window double-checked. But the fear lingered. "What if it's not enough?" she asked quietly, curled on the couch beside Isabel while Grayson spoke on the phone in the other room. Isabel took her hand. "Then we fight harder," she said. "Together." And for the first time, Naya didn't pull away from the word. Together. But none of them expected what would happen next. The rain began just after midnight. At first, it was a quiet patter against the windows, like the hesitant drumming of fingers. Then came the wind, low and restless, rustling the trees outside the Maddox estate. The house stood steady, surrounded by technology and reinforced steel, but within its walls the storm felt closer than ever. It seeped in through memories and nerves, soaked into the thoughts of everyone inside. Naya had just drifted into a shallow sleep, curled under the blankets in her room with the twins and their bassinets nearby. The low hum of the baby monitor pulsed faintly beside her bed. Her dreams, when they came, were thin and uneasy. She saw her mother's face shifting in the fog, holding out her hand, saying something Naya couldn't quite hear. The words disappeared behind wind and glass. Then, in the distance, came the unmistakable creak of a door, followed by silence. Her eyes opened all at once. She lay still, heart pounding. For a moment, she couldn't tell if she'd heard it in a dream or in the room. She pushed back the covers and sat up. The house was quiet, save for the rain and the wind. The twins were sleeping soundly. Nothing was out of place. She stood and walked to the nursery just to check. Her steps were silent on the hardwood floor. The hall was dark, the shadows long and wavering. The nursery door was open. That was the first wrong thing. She never left it open. She stepped inside, her breath caught in her chest. The mobile above the crib spun lazily, casting dim shadows on the walls. A gust of wind blew the curtains aside. The window was open, and one of the cribs was empty. For a full second, her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. There was the soft creaking of the mobile, the distant rumble of thunder, the rush of her own blood in her ears. But the image in front of her refused to change. Amara was there, curled up and breathing, but Zola's crib was bare, the blanket pushed to one side, the mattress cool. Then she screamed. It tore through the house like lightning. Her voice cracked, shrill and desperate, and it jolted the entire home into motion. Grayson leapt out of bed, heart racing, already pulling on a shirt as he ran down the hallway. Isabel, still in her robe, met him at the top of the stairs, her face pale with terror. Naya's scream echoed again, this time sharp and broken. "She's gone!" Naya cried from the nursery. "Zola! She's not! She's gone!" Isabel burst into the room and swept Amara into her arms, holding her close as the baby woke with a frightened cry. Grayson ran straight to the security panel by the stairwell, fingers flying across the touchscreen. "Naya," Isabel said urgently, "did you see anyone? Did you hear anything else?" "No," she gasped, her voice shaken. "Just the window. I was sleeping, and then I knew something was wrong. I just knew." Grayson pulled up the camera feed, fast-forwarding through the last half hour. His jaw clenched as he watched. There, at 2:37 a.m., a figure appeared on the screen, creeping through the side yard. The rain masked his movements, the wind muffling any sounds he might have made. He moved like someone who already knew the layout of the house, someone who had been watching. The man disabled the backup generator with a practiced motion. Grayson hadn't secured it yet, something he had planned to do the next morning, and slipped in through the rear entrance. The door had been unlocked. It was a crack in the armor, a mistake. Grayson hit pause. Douglas. His face, wet and wild, appeared briefly in the frame. He looked thinner than before, his eyes sunken and glassy, his expression cracked with something unhinged. Then he vanished into the house. Grayson fast-forwarded again. He appeared in the hallway, then the nursery, scooped up Zola like she was a bundle of laundry and turned back toward the rear exit. But something was wrong. He didn't run. He didn't leave the property. He was still there. Grayson turned to Isabel. "I think he's hiding somewhere on the grounds." Naya, already slipping into her sneakers, stood by the door, dripping with fear and fury. "I know where he is." Isabel clutched Amara tighter. "Naya, wait." "I know where he is," she repeated. "There's a garden shed. It's old, behind the hedge near the woods. He made me and the girls hide in there once when he was angry. When Mom wasn't home. He knows it's there." Grayson grabbed a flashlight and a set of keys. "Stay with Isabel. Lock the doors." But Naya was already gone. The rain slammed into her the moment she stepped outside. It drenched her within seconds, her clothes clinging to her skin, her hair flattened to her face. But she didn't stop. Her legs carried her through the backyard, around the side of the house, across the grass that was already turning to mud. She ducked under the branches of the hedgerow, her heart beating in her throat. There it was, the shed. Its door was slightly ajar. She approached, slowly now, the rain muffling her steps. She pressed her hand to the side of the shed, took a breath, and pushed the door open. He was there. Douglas. He sat on the floor, cradling Zola against his chest. His eyes were wild, unfocused. His shirt was soaked through, and he rocked back and forth, muttering to himself. "She looks just like her," he said. "Like her mother. Before she left me. Before she poisoned everything." Zola whimpered softly in his arms. "Put her down," Naya said. Her voice was steady, though every part of her was trembling. Douglas looked up at her, blinking like he'd just realized she was real. "You took them from me," he said. "You and her. You think they'll love you? You think those rich people will keep you safe forever?" Grayson appeared behind her then, his flashlight beam landing squarely on Douglas's face. The older man flinched and turned away, shielding his eyes. "You've made your last mistake," Grayson said. Douglas clutched Zola tighter, his grip shifting. "Come any closer and I swear—" He didn't finish. Zola whimpered again, her small voice piercing the madness. And something cracked. For just a moment, Douglas's arms loosened. Naya moved first. She lunged forward and pulled her sister from his grasp in one smooth motion, holding the baby close to her chest as she backed away. Grayson stepped in at the same time, grabbing Douglas by the arm and dragging him upright. They slipped and grappled in the mud, fists and elbows and furious shouts lost in the storm. It took less than a minute. The flash of red and blue lights cut through the trees as the police arrived. Officers leapt from the car and pulled the men apart. Douglas screamed incoherently, his words slurred and wild. They handcuffed him and read him his rights while he thrashed and shouted and cursed the sky. Naya stood shaking, Zola still in her arms, the rain washing over both of them. Grayson turned to her, muddy and soaked but alive, his eyes locked with hers. "It's over," he said. Not quite, but close. By the time the sun rose, Douglas was in custody. A restraining order had been filed. The security footage had been handed to the authorities. The police promised to press charges: unlawful entry, kidnapping, endangerment, multiple counts. Inside the house, Isabel dried off Naya and wrapped Zola in a warm blanket. EMTs checked her for bruises, but the baby was fine, just cold and scared. Naya sat on the back porch with a new towel over her shoulders, her arms wrapped around herself. Grayson stood nearby, silent, watching the light return to the sky. "He's gone?" she asked. Grayson nodded. "And he can't come back?" "We won't let him," he said. "Not now, not ever." She looked down at Zola, who was sleeping again, a small patch of hair curling over her forehead. "I thought we lost her," Naya whispered. "You didn't," Isabel said, kneeling beside her. "You saved her. Again." Naya exhaled, her eyes stinging with something too deep for tears. She had done what she promised her mother. She had protected them. But more than that, she hadn't done it alone. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. The days that followed felt unreal. The storm had passed, but its imprint remained like bruises under the skin, silent reminders that fear had lived there. The house, once so foreign to Naya, now felt like the inside of a heartbeat. Each corner held a new kind of memory. A warm bottle at 3 a.m., the giggle of a baby on the rug, the soft rhythm of Isabel humming while folding laundry. It was nothing like the world she had come from. In this place, nothing slammed. No one shouted. And if someone raised their voice, it was only to laugh or call for help, not to hurt. Douglas was gone, really gone, arrested, charged. The restraining order filed and enforced with full police support and round-the-clock contact between Grayson's legal team and the court. The footage from the security cameras left no room for interpretation. He had broken into the home of a child not legally his. He had taken a baby in the middle of the night. He had been armed, if not with weapons, then with intention. The authorities didn't need more than that. Grayson had been calm during the entire process, but his tension showed in the fine set of his shoulders and the tight line of his jaw whenever the subject came up. He spoke with the confidence of someone used to negotiating with hard people in high towers, but Isabel saw the toll it took. More than once, Naya had caught him sitting alone in the living room after everyone had gone to bed, staring into the unlit fireplace, his thoughts somewhere far away. But he never faltered. He filed the paperwork. He spoke to the judge. He stood in court beside his attorney as Naya sat behind him, holding Amara on her lap, Zola asleep in the stroller nearby. The hearing was quiet, respectful. The judge, a woman with kind eyes and tired hands, listened carefully as the lawyer read through the events of the past month. She reviewed the medical reports, the letter from Naya's mother, the testimony from Isabel, the video footage. She asked Naya only one question. "Do you feel safe here with Mr. Maddox?" Naya, with both hands on her sisters, had not hesitated. "Yes." "Do you want to stay here with him and Miss Isabel?" Again. "Yes." That was all. The rest was signed, sealed, stamped. Emergency guardianship became permanent. Full custody granted. Douglas Hargrove stripped of all parental rights. It was done. The court session ended not with applause or celebration, but with quiet relief, like a breath finally released after being held for too long. Outside the courthouse, Isabel hugged Naya tight, and Grayson placed a hand on her shoulder, not speaking, just anchoring her. They went home in the same car, the babies buckled into new car seats, Naya staring out the window, blinking against the brightness of the world. Back at the house, something was different. There were balloons on the gate, a handmade sign that read, "Welcome Home," streamers in the front hallway, a cake in the kitchen, vanilla with white frosting and tiny sugar lines sitting along the edge. Isabel's idea. Grayson had tried to talk her out of the decorations, thinking maybe it was too much, but she had insisted. "This is a celebration," she had said, "for all of us." Naya didn't know what to say at first. She walked slowly through the entryway past the table covered in snacks and presents. She paused in front of a framed photograph on the mantel. It showed her holding the twins on the porch in the morning light, wrapped in blankets, eyes closed. The image had been taken the morning after Douglas's arrest. She hadn't even known Grayson had taken it. Beneath it, a gold plaque read, "Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear hand-me-down shoes and carry hope in their hearts." Naya stared at the photo for a long time, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She didn't feel like a hero, but she did feel seen. Isabel brought out party hats and insisted on placing one on each baby's head. They fell off almost immediately, but Zola squealed with delight at the attention. Amara waved her hands in sleepy protest. The laughter that filled the kitchen was real, unguarded. Naya sat at the table with a slice of cake and let herself smile for the first time in days. Afterward, when the decorations had come down and the twins had been tucked into their cribs, Grayson asked her to come outside for a moment. The evening was clear. The sky stretched above them, dark and deep and endless. Stars winked through the darkness. They sat together on the back porch steps, the wood warm beneath them from the day's sun. Naya held the line in her lap, running her fingers along the familiar seams. "I have something for you," Grayson said quietly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim folder. It was plain, but when he opened it and handed her the top page, her breath caught. Her name was printed at the top. Naya Maddox. Below it, her birth date, her information, her new status. Adopted, official. She looked up at him, lips parting. "You want to adopt me?" "If you'll let us," he said. "All three of you, not just custody, not just guardianship, a family, ours, yours." She didn't speak. Instead, she leaned forward and threw her arms around him. It wasn't careful or reserved like their earlier hugs had been. It was full and raw and trembling. He held her, one arm around her back, the other resting gently on the line still cradled between them. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes." She cried then, not out of fear or grief or desperation, but out of something else entirely, something that tasted like peace, like safety, like home. The adoption process moved quickly. Grayson's legal team knew how to handle everything. The judge signed off with a smile. Friends and neighbors who had heard the story from the news reached out, offering support, clothes, toys, meals, even handmade blankets embroidered with the girls' names. The community embraced them, and Naya found herself slowly becoming part of it. She started school. A small local school with kind teachers and books that smelled like sunlight. She was nervous at first, terrified that people would ask too many questions or that she wouldn't belong, but the other students welcomed her without hesitation. Her teacher, Mrs. Dorsey, gave her a special notebook on the first day. "For your story," she said, "whenever you're ready to write it." The twins grew quickly, crawling, babbling, grabbing at everything. Their laughter filled the house, their tiny hands constantly reaching for Naya. They knew her, they trusted her, and they were safe. One quiet Sunday, Grayson, Isabel, Naya, Amara, and Zola stood in a small courtroom downtown. The judge, the same one from the earlier hearings, presided over the final step. With one swing of her gavel, the adoption was official. "Welcome to your forever home," she said. Afterward, they took a photo together, all five of them, Grayson's arm around Isabel holding Amara, Zola nestled in Naya's arms. The family that shouldn't have been, but was. That night, Naya stood at the window in her room, watching the sky. The stars were out again, just like they had been on the porch that first night. She held the lion close and whispered, "We're safe now, Mama. You can rest." Then she turned toward the crib where Zola stirred in her sleep, and Amara cooed softly in the dim glow of the nightlight. They were hers, and she was home. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more. Check out the next video and explore our other stories too. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them.